First of all, before I start, I just want to say it's absolutely fantastic to look out and see a full packed room here today and actually be able to see faces looking back after a 2-year absence, while everyone really did embrace the new technology in terms of our webinars the last few years. You can't beat having the face-to-face event, so it's great to be here, and well done to everybody for coming out in such good numbers, and I hope you get a lot and take a lot from the day. It's an important educational and training event, but it's also an important social event as well, so it's great to have everybody here. So my talk today is going to be focused on enhancing representation on group water scheme boards and committees. And I suppose this photograph maybe epitomises what we are all aspiring to achieve. Is a photo of the Clough-Cummer Group Water Scheme in County Galway, and it was given to me by my colleague Karen Carney, who was at a recent meeting with the scheme. But I think if you look at that photo, you see the diverse range of representation that's there in terms of age and youth and expertise, and also they're all smiling. They're all extremely happy to be involved in their local group water scheme, which is so important as well. And Joanne mentioned earlier on, and I just took I stole a snippet from her video. I hope you don't mind, Joanne, but I was struggling to find photographs of construction of the original group water schemes, and I would say to anybody, if you have any photographs or archives, we have some in stock, but we'd love to build on it, so please send them on to us. But if you think about group water schemes from the start, and that video that Joanne presented really set the tone, I suppose, in terms of what group schemes were all about. They're all about community. They're all about people working together. And it was driven by basic need. It was basically people needed water supply. They had this opportunity if they grasped it, and they did. And it was a fantastic, I suppose, example of what communities can do by working together. And that's been evident right through, I suppose, the rural water sector. I mean, the huge sense of pride still exists. We see it every day. We're dealing with group water schemes. They're so proud of what they've achieved over the years. Okay, there have been huge challenges that have had to be overcome and continue to be there to be addressed, but that sense of pride has not changed. It has not gone away. And I think it's really, really important. And that's just the second photograph. Is just a photo from Linz Craig's group water schemes, who are doing some fantastic work in relation to the source protection initiatives they're implementing. But again, it's just a sample of that community spirit that's still out there today. The review of the rural water sector, as Joanne has already gone through, is well underway at this stage. I think it gives us some opportunities, some time to reflect. I think, as Joanne mentioned, it's important to recognise the achievements of the sector to date, and I suppose in particular how the group water scheme sector in particular, has evolved and adapted over the years. But it also gives us the opportunity to think about the future. And when we do that, I suppose we need to look inward. We need to look at ourselves. We need to look at what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, what our opportunities are, and what our threats as well. And I think as part of this, I would encourage every group water scheme to look at themselves in that way and ask yourselves, well, what are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Because it's providing such a vital service, and to ensure the public health of our members, we have to make sure that we're at all stages fully compliant with the drinking water regulations, with the various pieces of legislation and the requirements and owners that are set, and standards that are set for us to achieve. The future challenges, I think Joanne has addressed this, so I'm not going to dwell on it, but again, I've just only highlighted a few. This is not an exhaustive list at all, but there are immediate short-term and long-term challenges that are there that are going to have to be addressed, and I think, again, it's good to be aware of those and trying to work around putting solutions in place for them. And I think through the workings of the Rural Water Working Group and others, I think many of these issues, they simply can and will be overcome, and I'm confident that many of them will be overcome. But in order for us as a sector and our group water schemes, I suppose, to overcome them, and particularly some immediate challenges, we really need to have the full support of our membership behind us at all times. And I suppose that is so essential from the start of the sector in terms of how it was created right through to today. We are there, and boards of group water schemes are representing their membership. So it's up to the board to make sure that members are fully aware of what's actually happening and understand it to the best of their ability. So getting to the nub of my presentation, really it's about looking at maybe improving group water scheme board representation and how that might be improved. I have a series of questions that I'm going to pose to the audience. I'm not looking for answers right now, but I'd like you to take these questions away, think about them, and apply them to your own situation. The first thing is, I suppose, many of you might feel, well, is there a problem? We have a group water scheme board in place. We feel we're very well represented, or representative of our membership, but are you? And I suppose it's no harm to drill down into that and explore that. I put up this question, I think about 5 years ago at this conference when we were talking about rationalisation and amalgamation. How many new board members has your scheme recruited in the past 5 years? How many has it recruited in the last 10 years? 15? And again, it is a challenge, and we will discuss it later on, in trying to encourage and how are we going to get, I suppose, new people involved in group water schemes. What is the age profile of your group water scheme board? Now, I don't mean to be, I'm definitely not ageist, and I think I really do respect the experience that age brings. But as I look around the room here today, it's great to see actually a really diverse audience in front of me. But I am seeing still an awful lot of faces that I would have seen here maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago as well. So I think it's a challenge for every group water scheme, but it's one that we have to consider and address as well. I think age brings a huge amount of experience, and particularly some members of group water scheme boards that might be retired have a huge amount of expertise and time available to dedicate to the role. So it is important, but I suppose it's making sure that it's representative, I suppose, of the membership. What is the gender balance on your group water scheme board? Look, let's call a spade a spade. It's a male-dominated sector. We have struggled down through the years to get more female representation on boards. It is a challenge, but it's one that simply has to be addressed. As I say that, I'm looking down at Belcara here in front of me, who are probably, I would say, the exact opposite maybe of that. And there are some fantastic work that's being done to address this issue, and we need to learn from those. How active are your group water scheme board? How often do you meet? Is it still left to the one or two? And these are not just rural water questions. I think these are any community group, anyone that's involved in community development, community groups of any types. These are questions I think we all need to ask ourselves, and I suppose try and address them insofar as we can. Just some commentary we often hear when we raise these issues, maybe with group water scheme boards, from board members maybe. People don't want to get involved. That's the first thing we'll hear. Young people, no interest in water. People are far too busy. No nominations were received. We sent out our nominations, none were received. We're too small a group water scheme. People only interested when there's a problem. Oh, I only ever get the phone call when there's a problem. That's how many times have we heard that? And we can all relate to them. And I suppose in many situations, these are genuine challenges but yet we have to try and find a way, I suppose, of overcoming them. Comments we might hear sometimes from group water scheme members when we be at AGMs. Sure, look, Johnny and Pat look after the scheme, they're doing a great job. I wouldn't know enough about the scheme. It's a regular one we hear. People may be afraid that they've I suppose the same committee are looking after it for years. I might feel a bit intimidated getting involved. This is it's a group that's they're there for years, and I might feel a bit intimidated if I was to try and get involved all of a sudden. Or maybe I don't know anything about water, therefore I feel I have nothing to contribute. These are real issues, and I suppose, and challenges that we have to address. And I'll come to that maybe later on. Just some other questions. How is your group water scheme perceived by your own members? Put your shoes in their feet. You're receiving a supply of water from your local group water scheme. If they were asked by a stranger in the morning, how do they perceive your group water scheme? What's the local group scheme like? Would it be a positive answer? Would it be a negative answer? Would it be indifferent? Do they even know they're on a group water scheme? Are they informed? How do you inform your members? Do they fully understand what your scheme does? Do they understand the democratic nature of schemes, membership owned, membership controlled, and how it operates? Do they understand their own rights as members of schemes and their responsibilities as members of group water schemes? So I suppose the challenge that I'm putting to every group water scheme here today is to ask yourself, well, what are you doing as a scheme? Have you even discussed it? Is it even on your radar? What are you doing to attract new board members to your board or your committee? And how easy is it to access the information about the scheme? And how do we communicate with our members? Okay, and I have to say some schemes are excellent in this, and there's excellent examples and templates, but we need to learn from people that are doing it right and doing it successfully. Are we missing opportunities to attract people? And I think that's a really, really important message. And I think we are. And I'm going to touch on some of them, I suppose, on my next few slides. But I really would encourage every board to start asking themselves these questions. We did a gender balance survey back in 2021. And one of the questions that was asked is, what do you feel, this was again, was across the sector, it was a mixture of people involved with schemes, group water scheme members, etc. What do you feel has been the biggest barrier to female representation on group water scheme committees? And I think the 33% of the respondents felt that there's a misconception about the role of a group water scheme committee member, i.e. that maybe it involves some form of manual labour. And I think when you look back to the old clips, you can see where that might have stemmed from. It was actually people volunteering and getting actively involved in doing work. That has changed and has evolved. And I think we need to educate our members of that. 31% said there's a lack of interest from women in joining group water scheme committees. That was just maybe they weren't interested. 18%, I don't think there are any barriers. And 12%, women are not being encouraged to join group water scheme committees. 6% other. Another question we put out there was, what do you feel should be the highest priority in working towards greater gender balance on committees? 40%, identifying potential female committee members at local level and approaching them individually. 39%, raising awareness in the local community about the role of the group water scheme committee. 13%, educating school children that they may be encouraged to join in the long term. And a few don't know and a few don't think it should be addressed at all. So just interesting results. So what should a representative board look like? In an ideal world, well, it really should be you're striving to achieve a cross-section of the community, cross-section of your own membership. So you're trying to encourage a diverse range of age, gender, expertise, water consumers. So there's different types of users of across our schemes. So again, making sure they're adequately represented on the board. That they're democratically elected. Obviously, we all are operating under group water scheme rules and regulations that have to be followed. But again, they all have adopted that democratic principle. And it's important that they're elected in those ways, but that the board members and the membership is aware of that process and fully aware of it. That they're properly trained, they understand their role, and they understand the important oversight role. And I suppose that's an area that we in the Federation and the board in particular are trying to develop processes, training courses and methods to help you encourage your own, get the information out to your own membership. There's a new training course that was rolled out during COVID. It was an online, but it was a virtual training course available for new group water scheme board members or new group water scheme staff that were appointed. And massive uptake on it, huge uptake on it. We're delighted to see those numbers. And again, that course continues to be made available. We're also developing a simple guidance note for group water schemes to get information out to their members in terms of just explaining what the scheme does, how it operates, etc. Because this has changed over the years. There are now 150 people employed, over 150 people employed either full or part-time basis by group water schemes across the country. The reliance on volunteerism to look after operational works has changed completely. It's now group water scheme board members and boards are being asked to do, it's more of an oversight role and making sure that things are being done. And obviously that comes with responsibilities, but again, it's making sure that people are aware of those. Are there opportunities? I think there are a multitude of opportunities at the minute. I think every scheme needs to consider these. projecting a positive image of your scheme. What are you doing to try and project that image of the excellent work that we are seeing on a daily basis? And it's something the Federation are actively trying to promote, because we see what you're doing, and maybe it's that information is just not getting out there into the community. So again, how do we address that? Keeping your own members informed on a regular basis. Some schemes are excellent at doing this. They get their annual newsletter that's sent out to all the members of everything that's happened over the year. Informing the membership is now going to become a significant requirement of the new recast Drinking Water Directive, which will be talked about later on. So again, developing models that work and getting that information out there. Rationalisation and amalgamation. For small schemes, they simply maybe don't have the resources to be able to do this. We need to start thinking about long-term sustainable solutions. How are we going to do this? Is there options for us in terms of possible rationalisation or amalgamation strategies? I know there's a lot of work being put into that over the last number of years. Employment of managers, as I said already, and operational staff. Many schemes have gone down that road. Again, stressing the oversight role of the board. Drinking water source protection. The multiple environmental benefits that comes with this. The unique opportunity, particularly in this space. And we've seen schemes actively doing this across our pilot projects. Working with schools, working with other community groups. So I suppose just to give an example of the schemes that are involved, for example, in the Source Protection Project, when they went out and approached people in the community, and I suppose it was realising, going back to first principles, that group water schemes were set up for the betterment of our families and our community. Therefore, we need to protect the source. If we don't have a good quality water source, we don't have a group water scheme. And water is always going to be the primary focus of the group water scheme, and making sure that it's compliant with the directive. But people, our members, may not be interested in water. They may have more of an interest, for example, in biodiversity. They may have more of an interest in climate change or other. They may just want to make a social contribution to society. And when people have been actively engaged with it and encouraged to participate, we have seen that they're hugely excited, they're enthused by it. Any of the photographs that we're taking in relation to these projects, and I know Dr. Jimmy O'Keefe from DCU will be here later on. He'll be talking about the report that they've just completed for us in looking at the intangible assets in the group water scheme sector and the value of them. The people they've engaged with as part of that, they're extremely happy, extremely proud, and again, there's no reason why that cannot be replicated across the country. So being part of something meaningful, sustainable and enjoyable. Working with local national schools, we've seen here examples in Roscommon through the project. Even creating the awareness through the water availability, the water fountains has been a huge interest, in putting them in strategic locations, maybe near local schools, etc. And the amount of people that are actually using them. Yeah, it's fantastic to see. Linking in with other groups, and I know we'll be talking about that later on as well. In my experience, just ask people. And I suppose we don't do that enough. We need to actively get out there and just ask people to become involved. And my own experience on this, I'm involved in 2 community groups myself, where I'm from. I lived in the area my whole life. I've never actively got involved in committees up to maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. And the main reason I did was because I was approached by someone. Someone came to me and they said, would I be interested in getting involved in the local development association? I said, okay, don't know anything really much about it. I knew it looked after the local hall in the village, but that was really it. And I suppose through even my own experience on that, I've learned a huge amount. I've met new people I'm living next to and close by and with. But now, if I hadn't been asked to get involved, I probably wouldn't have. I would have set back because there was a committee there, so as far as I was concerned, that was looking after that. Similar thing has happened, and I see some of my colleagues in the audience here today in relation to a local tidy towns group I'm involved in as well. So if I hadn't been asked to get involved in those things, I probably wouldn't have. I might have sit back. Now, the community spirit, maybe I should have put more pressure on myself to get involved, but I've never been as happy to be involved in these things now as we see progression. And we're getting other people involved as well, other diverse views and age profiles across those committees. Group water schemes have been doing the same, and I suppose there are plenty of examples out there of very good success stories. And I'm just throwing up a couple of photos, but just I suppose one in particular I'm very familiar with, and I hope our crony are represented here today at the conference. This is a scheme that would have been so like many other schemes in County Tipperary over the years that would have been operated by maybe 2 or 3 people that were dedicated to the cause and original trustees of the scheme up to maybe about 10, 15 years ago. And I was working as a development officer with the scheme at the time. And I remember the trustees came to me and they said, look, we just have enough. We want out. We've done it for 40 years. We need to. And I said, look, brilliant. We'll try and help you and we'll call a meeting. And they helped me. I helped them draft a letter. And I wrote a letter and they came back to me, no, it's not strong enough. We need to really, put the frighteners up people that we are walking away from this. And so I drafted a second draft, a little bit more sternly, and went out. Well, the hall was packed that night. We got a committee of 12 elected and a fantastic, diverse range of expertise across the entire scheme. And that committee has been working really, really well. They've since appointed a group water scheme manager. And Eleanor, I don't know if you're here, but Eleanor is actively working with a number of group water schemes in that area now. And even more recently, this photograph is the chairman that was appointed that night, about 10, 15 years ago, has since passed the baton on to a new chairman. So they're using the cooperative ethos and the rotation in the rules to be able to have successive generations coming forward. And the second photograph here is a very similar situation. I won't go into detail because Eugene's going to start banging the glass down in a minute. But this is Ballynagate Group Water Scheme, a very small scheme in Wicklow, but again have been through a major transition process and very successfully. So to conclude, I suppose, the first thing I would say, look, group water schemes, we must, as a sector, continue to evolve and adapt as we've always done. And I think the history and looking backwards, we'll see that we have evolved over those years successfully. This is entirely within the control of every community-owned group water schemes. The time is now. There's multiple opportunities out there to get people involved. All you need is the energy to go out and do it. And I know people are saying we're busy, we have enough on our plate, whatever. Put 2 or 3 people to the task to go out there and actively see if people will get involved. And you'd be surprised the answers you get back. There are success stories. There's continued support and advice available from ourselves. The future of every group water scheme depends on this. If we don't have our membership behind us, if our boards are not reflective of our membership, we won't have a sector. Thank you very much.